Myself now. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
I hope you are ready for us now.
I'm ready. What I'm trying to do is to switch laptop to my preferred laptop. So in case you see me make a switch, the internet on the other laptop is bad, but I'm ready.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir, for joining.
Yeah.
Okay. No, he's 2 minutes. I think the moderator is not around now. To the things Mr. Oluyemi will be telling us because he's really prepared for us. I trust him so well. He's really prepared. I'll be handing over to Bukola to moderate the event this afternoon. Thank you so much. And please make sure to fill out the survey that would send out and also fill the attendance that would actually be sending during that's after the event. Thank you so much for joining once again. Please, Bukola, you can take over now. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if you all can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Rome Business School Business Leadership Development Program. My name is Bukola Olori. I'm a Senior Human Resources Officer at Brian Moreau Limited, and it's my pleasure to moderate today's event. So today we have our special guest, Mr. Oluyemi Theophilus Adeosun, who will be speaking to us on the topic internal communication and employee engagement. So I'm going to be reading Mr. Oluyemi's brief bio. Adeosun Oluyemi Theophilus is a top-performing, accomplished, and skilled human resources executive and researcher with over 18 plus years of experience across high-profile industries, including power, oil and gas, telecommunication, broadcasting, real estate, advertising, academia, consulting, and volunteer work. He offers professional expertise and a diverse range of skills within training and development, organizational strategy development, business partnership, change management, employee relationship and management, and administrative expert HRO. Mr. Oluyemi is a community builder and the founder of HR Mentorship, a group of HR professionals across with over 4,000 members. He has a YouTube channel dedicated to HR domain knowledge with over 3,000 plus subscribers. His name on YouTube is Oluyemi Adeosun. Mr. Oluyemi is an alumni of Lagos Business School, HR Academic Executive Program. Mr. Oluyemi is also a member of Chartered Institute of Personnel Management, MCIPM. He's an elected council member and has certification in Senior Professional Human Resources International and Global Practitioner Human Resources. He's currently a PhD candidate at Economic Department of University of Lagos, and he holds his MBA from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. Mr. Adeosun Oluyemi has worked as Group HR in Axelex Holding, Head Employee Relations at Ikeja Electric. He has worked as the Head Human Resources and Administration at Career Plus Limited. He has also worked as People Managers at Russell Smith Integrated Oil and Gas Oil Services. Mr. Oluyemi has also worked as Head Human Resources at Emotional Advertising. He also has prior experience in consulting and HR experience at Globalcom, a major telecommunication firm. Mr. Adeosun Oluyemi is a member of Toastmasters International and have attained the highest award of Distinguished Toastmaster, that's DTM, and he has published over 32 papers in reputable journals, and he currently works at Ethel PLC as the head human resources. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Oluyemi to speak to us on today's topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, madam, for that elaborate introduction. And thank you, everyone that has joined this call. I absolutely do not take it for granted to be invited by the prestigious Rome Business School. And I'm happy and excited to be associated with what you are doing, the value of education you are providing to Nigerians and, of course, other citizens of the world. I've been requested to speak to the topic effective internal communication and employee engagement. And that is what we'll be looking at today. I'll be sharing, I have a slide that will guide our conversation. And at some point, we'll also be taking questions, comments, and contributions. Please, let's be active on the chat box. Let's provide our thoughts, our input, and our comments. Now, when we talk about internal communication and employee engagement, at the surface of it, this looks like a very simple topic, very direct topic. But I'd like to say quickly here that many things that go wrong in an organization can be traced, attributed to the quality of internal communication. And I'd like to say here very early, I'd like to establish this point quickly, that whether you are talking to your employees or you are not talking, you are actually communicating. Sometimes we assume that because you are not saying anything, you are not communicating. No, even silence is a form of communication. When you say things and you shout is a type of communication. So communication has different shades and different types. So for example, you can say something, but you are saying it 3 months too late. That's also a type of communication. And you can have timely communication. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I would like to, these are some of the things we'll look at today, time permitting. Okay, we've already started with the introduction. We'll look at internal communications tips, employee engagement tips. We'll look at some real-life examples. We'll also try and tie internal communications and engagement together. All right, so I would like to say that when we speak to internal communication, we need to be intentional. We need to be deliberate. Even in relationships, say between married people, parents and children, you need to be intentional. You can't just be freestyling. And sometimes in organizations, in HR, sometimes we freestyle. I'll say that again. Sometimes in organizations and in HR, we freestyle. And that freestyling can put us in trouble because what we mean may not be what the employees are getting. And, so when we talk about having a communication plan, a strategy is very important and very critical. And there are two sides to this communication. So there are things you know upfront that will happen, and then you plan to communicate it. However, there are also things that happen unplanned, unscheduled, and you need to react and respond to these things in a very timely fashion. Now, I would want us to look at a case study, and I will show us quickly. And this is the case study. It's showing on your screen right now, but I will also read it out to us. Okay. Now, 2 employees out of 150. So imagine an hypothetical scenario. Your organization has a manpower of 150 employees or staff. Now, in the last 6 months, 2 of them have been promoted twice. On each of these occasions, the promotions were announced to all staff via an email. In other words, you will send an email to say, so has been promoted from assistant manager to senior manager. So has been promoted from senior manager to general manager, and so on and so forth. Note, in this particular organization, your promotion cycle is actually every 2 years. In other words, according to your policy, in HR, we talk about policies a lot. According to our policy, promotion is every 2 years, but we do calibration every year, and if you get promoted this year, normally, except under exceptional situations or scenarios, circumstances, you are not supposed to be promoted again next year. It should be in 2 years' time. But our reality, we have 2 people who have been promoted twice in a space of 6 months. I'm asking the audience this question, ladies and gentlemen. Should this communication have gone out? Don't forget the circumstances. The reality is 2 people have been promoted twice in 6 months. Fact. We also have a policy document that says we promote every 2 years. Now, so I want to know your thoughts, and don't try and just say yes or no. It's not necessarily the yes or the no that matters to me now. It's like the explanation behind your yes or your no. So your yes can be correct, your no can be correct. It's the richness, the thought around it that I want to hear. The next question from this case is that will communicating this information about these 2 employees, will it lead to employee engagement? And when we are talking about employee engagement now, we are talking about the whole staff, generally, the 150. The communication about the promotion of these 2 people, will it lead to employee engagement? So let me see. I don't know if we can be permitted to speak. I'll be delighted to take maybe 2 or 3 voice contribution to this case study. I'll be permitted, I'll be excited if 2 or 3 people can speak to it. I'm also currently checking the chat to see if anybody is willing to contribute. I see Ugochi's hands up. If we can permit her to speak, that would be fantastic. I also see Abubakar's hand up. So if we can take him as the second contributor, please.
Okay, Ugochi, please, you can go ahead.
Yes, I'm speaking already. Good afternoon, Mr. Femi Adosu. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ugochi Ohabuike. First of all, we look at organizational policy, which states that two years for promotion, and this people have been promoted twice in 6 months. This communication to me is not necessary really, because of what it can breed in the organization. It can breed a lot of arguments. It can breed some people not being satisfied. It can breed people not being motivated to work. It can breed a lot of things. So I don't think it is necessary, because it will cause a lot of issues in the organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution. We'd like to take Mr. Abubakar's contribution. We'll take as many contributions as possible. Please, Mr. Abubakar, please.
Abubakar, you can go ahead, please.
Okay, if you have challenges with Mr. Abubakar, we can take Mr. Babatunde. Or
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. I think it's okay to announce it to them. Why? Because it will also show that they are serious and can boost their other people's morale to get such a promotion.
Okay.
I think that is it, sir.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Madam Rosemary, please. I like the fact that we are getting different perspectives on the same case study.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And
Good afternoon.
my view is that we need to put this in context. So what's the scenario today? Especially with the young generation, when you tell them there's a 2-year policy, they are not very excited about it because it's like you are stalling people. So if you've gotten that a lot, you might want to use this to say, when people go over and beyond, there are actually opportunities. Yes, there's a policy, but it doesn't mean we don't encourage people to go over and beyond. However, these two people need to have been seen. In the offices where we are, we know those who are working in quotes, and there are those that when you announce their names, we will all jump and carry them up. So we need to also be careful that this has been carefully done and it's not going to disenfranchise. But I think it should be announced depending on the scenario. If not, then we can decide not to.
Thank you so much. Let's quickly take Dowuse. I hope I pronounce your name well. Dowuse, then we move on to Kristen.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so I think I go with the last speaker. She just viewed or voiced my opinion almost exactly how I wanted to put it. But what I can add to it is in the communication that went out and why those people were promoted, even though the policy said 2 years and they're promoted in 6 months. I think that communication has to explicitly state why the reason why these people had been promoted this frequently, and that will be able to also cause what they call that employee engagement, because that would help the other employees see that if you work hard enough, that policy or no policy, you still get the reward of your hard work. So I believe that if they merited it and they had done something extraordinary, that thing should be mentioned so that it will calm the other employees who might now be offended or feel disgruntled for that exceptional treatment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So what I would like to do now, I would like to only take contributions that are not in line with what anybody has said. So for those of us whose hands are up, please, if your thought has been expressed, kindly stand down your hand. If you still have something to say that has not been said, let your hands remain up. So based on this, I would like to take Mr. Emmanuel, please. Mr. Emmanuel, then lastly, we'll take Obatayo and Okegene. Emmanuel, please. Thank you, sir.
My name is Emmanuel. Good afternoon, everyone. I might have to hands down because I think what the last two speakers said is what I was going to say. Anyways, I'm doing my MBA in East Africa. I'm so impressed with Rome Business School. I just got to know about it, and I'm looking forward to moving to Rome Business School in April. But like the last speaker said, just quickly in 1 minute, the reasons will have to be clearly stated so that
I don't know if it's my network. I can't hear him.
I think it's his network.
Okay. All right. Let's just take the last hand. Okegene. And that'll be the last contribution for this segment, please. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. You have spoken well. The first thing I wanted this case study to throw it out, which is the fact that different people in an organization will always have different opinions on things. So if you come today and say, we are going to double everybody's salary, don't assume everybody will be happy. I'll say that again. If you make a pronouncement in your organization today that you are going to double everybody's salary, don't assume everybody will be happy. Somebody will come and say, oh, for people who are already earning high, doubling their salary makes sense. For those of us who are earning low before, we now doubled our salary. What's happening? They are comparing their salary, the impact of the double on their own, vis-a-vis the impact of the double on some other people anymore. And this is one of the reasons why communication is very important, because you need to know the message you are passing out. You need to know what you want to say and how you want people to perceive it, and you need to put it out there. The second thing that this case study drew out, and the last 2-3 contributors really help us to bring that point out, which I appreciate, is the fact that, yes, they agreed that the information about the promotion should be communicated, but they drew our attention to the fact that we must not just communicate it, but we must be explicit in announcing why these two people got the promotion. Why these two people got the promotion and what they did to deserve the promotion. So on one hand, if there were no announcements and we just did it hush, believe me, you sincerely, one way or the other, people will get to know about the promotion. Some people will be in HR who will have drafted the letter. Some people will probably be in finance who will be responsible to disburse the revised pay or salary advice. The beneficiaries themselves, maybe out of gratitude or out of pride and show off, would seemingly tell their friend in confidence, and that friend will tell another friend, who will tell another friend, all in confidence. And over time, people will get to know that these two individuals got promoted. Again, if you also communicate and you just announce that these people got promoted without trying to say why they were promoted, people will begin to imagine, people will begin to suggest, people will be to say, oh, I used to see him or close to the MD's office. It's because they attend the same ministry. It's because they live in the same area. Or it's because they both went to the same alma mater. People will begin to, what we call conjecture, and that will lead to disaffection in the organization. And it will lead to people not, being motivated. People may be demotivated and disengaged. But if sincerely and truly they are done things out of the ordinary, and these things, we are able to identify them, communicate them, hopefully it will now serve as a motivation, as an impetus to the other employees to attempt, to strive, to say, oh, what can we do so that we too can be deserving of this sporadic, what do you call it now, promotion. All right. Again, it is not just what you say, it is how you say it. And we've intentionally tried to link the topic to this case study. In other words, communication and employee engagement. Because while it may be good in itself, or to promote 2 employees and announce the promotion of the 2 employees, there are 148 employees that have not been promoted. When they hear the information, they may be motivated or demotivated, depending on how we couch the announcement and how they perceive the fairness and justification of what of the promotion. Okay, so making progress. I mentioned that we should have a communication strategy. We're speaking about internal communication. For example, excuse me, for example, there should be a communication plan for 2024 from January to December. Now, what do you communicate? In HR, you communicate everything surrounding the entire HR value chain. Now, for most organizations, about now, they will have concluded with the budget for next year. So certain communications can go out around that. For many organizations, about now, you are already doing, year-end appraisals. There will be communications around that. Anytime from now, most organizations will already be firming up or will have firmed up the 2024 business objectives? What are the key KPIs or key result areas that the organization will be looking at? These things should what? Be communicated. If you have a business plan for 2024, you have business objectives, and you are not communicating it now to the employees, what will happen? It will, for example, impact on their being able to, generate their own KPIs, the departmental KPIs, the individual KPIs for 2024. If you want people to hit 2024 running, these parameters should have been identified early, agreed early, discussed early, and signed off early. Communication. If people enter 2024 and they don't enter it with clarity, what will happen to them? They will be confused. If they are confused, they will be demotivated. Okay, so you need to have and develop a communication strategy across the entire HR value chain, how the HR is supporting the business, and how the HR is trying to help assist the business in achieving the business outcome. Again, we also need to align our communication with our company values. So I'll pick a few company values that are relatively common or generic. Take, for example, integrity. Take, for example, innovation, just to mention two. It can be anything. The important thing is whatever your own core values are in your organization, there should be communication from HR around that, so that when you can reinforce these company values and you can demonstrate how, in the context of the organization, employees can live out these values. And why you must consistently communicate your internal values is so that people will live it out. It's not enough that when employees joined us during the induction onboarding process that was communicated. These things must be on an ongoing basis, so that as we do our day-to-day task, we must be able to connect it with the company's core values. Another third point here is that, and this speaks to communication in general. You see, some of us must have read one book, Love Languages. There are also, that doesn't apply only in relationship, emotional relationship. Even in workplace, people are impacted in different ways. There are some people, they want to read information. When they read it, they assimilate it better. There are some people, they want to, instead of read information, they want to see the information pictorially in forms of pictures. Some people want to listen to the information. Some people want a combination of all these. And that is why, for the most important things we are communicating as HR, as an organization, we must be intentional in putting or using multiple communication channels. So our emails, when you use the email to, on the email, for example, you can embed, what do you call it, animation, pictures, images, videos, and of course, text. Okay, intranet, Teams, Microsoft Office, all these other platforms that we use, Slack, all the collaborative tools, instant messaging, social media, different channels. So even our physical meetings, you may want to use it to reinforce some of this communication. Also, we need to ensure that internal communication consistently reflects and reinforce the core values, the organization's mission, the vision, and so on and so forth. When employees see a connection between what they do and the company's purpose, what tends to happen? Their engagement increase. There's one popular example that has been shared in multiple fora. A particular cleaner at NASA. NASA is a national space agency, in US, and it was cleaning. And the president of US, was taking a tour and just met him and casually said, "Oh, what do you do for us here at NASA?" You know, normally we'll have expected him to just say, oh, I clean the floor, I make this place clean. He said, I clean this place to ensure we can safely put astronauts in the moon or in space. What do you see there? He did not trivialize his job as a cleaner. He connected effective cleaning with space travels. Of course, think about it. If he doesn't clean well, and so it's a group of astronauts are on their way to go and board a shuttle, and then one or two of them trips on the way, do you know that that can set back a mission by 6 months or even more, depending on the severity of the injury? In internal communication, we must provide regular updates. See, sometimes we communicate, sometimes we don't communicate enough. So it's not just, and that is why the first point I mentioned earlier was a communication plan. So more or less you have like almost like a diary or like a calendar. Communicate, this goes out first week in January. A follow-up email goes out third week in January. By second week in February, this particular information goes out. By first week in March, so that you are going through like a checklist methodologically. You are following it and you are adhering to the communication plan. Of course, there may be reasons to communicate outside the plan, but the communication plan provides minimum communication strategies such that if you do that minimum, you will be good. We need to keep employees informed about company news, changes, and updates. You also need to let them know about what is changing. What is changing, okay? Then there's need, communication also connotes transparency. I was at a meeting just 2 days ago, and in that meeting, it was a cross-section of professionals who were having a conversation in that meeting. And somebody said, oh, earlier at some point this year, our management called like a town hall meeting, and the main message that was communicated at that town hall meeting was that due to the foreign exchange rates, Naira dollar devaluation, the organization was finding it difficult to remain profitable. And then that gentleman now said something. After that, he said, I looked at my colleague and whispered to him, since we've been working here, have they ever called a meeting to tell us that they have money before? I need us to reflect on this in the next 1 minute. In the places you have worked or where you work now, has there ever been a need to tell staff that, oh, maybe sales is dwindling, maybe we are not doing well in this area? But how often do you remember being called to a meeting to say we are actually doing well? Now, when we talk about effective internal communication, the communication cannot only focus on bad news or bad things. When communication is a habit, then it's robust. If we did well in Q1, we did well. In Q2, we didn't do well. In Q3, we picked up, we are doing well. But if the only time you always call employees is when we are not doing well, how do you expect that to foster the kind of employee engagement that you want? Even when you are doing well, don't be afraid that if you tell staff that they are doing well, they will relax, or there will be an increased demand for bonuses and increments in remuneration and welfare. No. This is part of the communication, transparency in your communication, both during trying times and when things are good, okay? Then we need to also provide training to employees. And when we say employees here, line managers, management team, okay, on effective communication. You know, sometimes we just assume that because somebody is senior, they don't need training in certain things. You can be a managing director and be a poor communicator. You may be an head of department, maybe because of your experience, your technical capabilities in certain areas. That does not necessarily mean your communication skills is top-notch. You may want to put this as part of your plans for 2024, that you ensure you make effective communication trainings. It can be one session. It can be something at one of your management meetings. Just get a slot and you put it there. Because if managers, if head of departments, strategic business leaders, if they become better at communication, you will be surprised to see how it will impact the energy levels in the organization. Part of communication, for example, is crediting people when they do well. Some managers will not credit people when they do well in their mind, and they're not trying to be malicious. After all, that's what we pay them for, to do well. However, when they drop the ball, when they make a mistake, when they goof, they are not shy as to calling out their subordinates and giving them a piece of their mind. So you will see that generally in organizations or departments or business leaders who communicate, the level of engagement of their employees are relatively higher than their counterparts who don't communicate. I'm sure some of us will have experienced this before. Maybe we work in an organization and our head of department goes for, say, weekly management meeting, maybe on Mondays in many organizations. And then they come back from that weekly meeting, they do not cascade like the key highlight of that meeting to their own team members. Even if you don't want to share everything that was discussed at the team with the team members, what about the things that particularly affect your own department or your own unit? Meanwhile, there are some other leaders, almost immediately they come either through a brief email or a brief meeting. They debrief the team and say, oh, at the management meeting of today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were the key highlights. 6 and 7 are specific to our department. These are the adjustments we need to make. These are the actions we need to prioritize. These are the things we need to deprioritize based on 1, 2, 3. When you communicate that way, even if, for example, you need to work extra late on some days that week, because you had communicated the outcome of the meeting, the members of the team can see where you're coming from. They just won't assume that, oh, our line manager is here again. There is a strong connection, link between what? Internal communication and employee engagement. And you need to look at the different communication approaches, the mode of communication, both formal and informal. The frequency, will it be once weekly or monthly or daily or per second? Then the content of the communication, the content, are they direct? Are they indirect? Okay. The quality of the communication, the direction of the communication. So, you know, when we communicate, sometimes you can communicate and there will be no opportunity for a response or a feedback. Okay, so when you communicate and there's opportunity for a feedback, that may even be better, because by providing that feedback, you'll be able to gauge, assess if the communication was clear, or based on the feedback, you need to make some other adjustments and come back with a revised communication. So all these things matter a lot, and they help us, get employee engagement. Now, employee engagement is the extent to which employees are emotionally invested in and committed to an organization's goals, values, and vision. You see, one of the peculiarities of the human being is that, yes, we want to be paid for what we do, but we also want to do it like we are also sort of altruistic. Even though it's our job, it's our work, there's a part of us that wants to go the extra mile, that wants to give way more than we are paid back to the organization, give way more than we are paid to the clients. And we don't want to be mechanical in our approach to executing our tasks and responsibilities. That's why most people, beyond our line manager giving us instruction, we also want to explore, are there better ways to get this done? Are there other alternatives to doing this effectively, getting a better outcome, improving the quality of the deliverables? Now, employee engagement represents the level of enthusiasm and dedication employees have towards their work and the company they work for. We say this a lot, that quite a number of employees appears Friday evening and saddest Monday morning or Sunday evening in anticipation of Monday. I read a study recently, I can't remember the source now, but in that study, I think maybe it was a Reader's Digest or something, they said working class people had the highest amount of heart attacks on Mondays. And they try to link it with the fact that quite a significant amount of people don't either like what they do or don't like those they work with and are not engaged. Are we together? Now, when we look at levels of employee engagement, so it's not always one narrow bucket that people are either engaged or disengaged. Let me also say this. The same individual can be engaged in the morning and be disengaged in the afternoon. And then in the evening is engaged again. So I'm also trying to show that our professionals too may be moving from different modes of engagement, even on a day or a weekly basis. So it's not compulsory that Oluyemi is permanently a disengaged staff or permanently an engaged staff. Yeah, some people may fall into those two broad categories, that they are generally engaged or generally disengaged. But we could also have modes of engagement. Some people are more engaged in the morning than in the evening. Why? They are like the people we call morning people. Whereas there are some other people, that's 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. When some people are beginning to go, they will now start to boot and they can walk till 11 at night. Now, that can be their work approach, but their work approach can also impact on their levels of engagement. Now, when you look at highly engaged people, they are active ambassadors of the company. They see themselves as part of the company's future. Then when we look at employees who are moderately engaged, they have a favorable outlook towards the company, but something holds them back. Maybe they're not completely happy with some particular parameters or factors. When you see somewhat disengaged people, look at that, somewhat disengaged, they will begin to be indifferent to the company's mission, and they are part of the people who will be most likely next on your attrition list. And one of the things with indifference, Mother Teresa of blessed memory said something that I'll never forget, and I agree with it absolutely. She said the opposite of love is not hate or hatred. That the opposite of love is not hate or hatred. That the opposite of love is what? Indifference. Because the indifferent person will not necessarily harm you, but they will do nothing. Now they will see something is on the decline, they will ignore. They will have a suggestion, they will withhold it. And that can even be more dangerous than being disengaged. Because most likely, when people are disengaged, they are visible in the sense that you know where they stand, that they are disengaged. They don't hide it. They can't hide it. At that level, they share negative opinions about the company and active doubts about the mission, and they can be disruptive to the workplace. And the way and manner we communicate or do not communicate can be the drivers and determinants of whether employees are in any of these 4 quadrants. In some instances, communication play a very important way. So let's look at some other things. Again, don't forget that I mentioned that communication, internal communication is key. And as HR practitioners and professionals, internal communication should be around the entire HR value chain. One of such value chain that is very dear to employees is career development. You need to support employees in their career growth by providing opportunities of training, mentorship, and advancement within the organization. We need to communicate. I've been in organizations where maybe the, what do you call it now? The career path is only with the career development unit. It's not a publicly available document. People don't know how long on the average do they need to stay on one grade. For example, the grading system, do they have steps? So hypothetical now, maybe you have grade A to say F, A being the lowest. Do you have grade A1, A2, A3, A4, then B1, 2, 3, 4, up to F1, 2, 3, 4? Do you have to spend, say, a range of time, say 6 months to 18 months to be on grade A, and so on and so forth? These things need to be clearly communicated. When you meet with employees, either one-on-one or in teams or unit or as a group, and you do like a career development, communication. Say, this is this. These are the determinants of whether you will get an A or A plus, or and so on and so forth. If you don't do this, sometimes line managers or HR can be shocked the way that when during the performance appraisal window, you see a lot of employees throwing tantrums in your head, like, but during induction, we told you these things. But when was that induction? 1 year ago, 2 years ago. Okay, other employee engagement drivers will include inclusive decision making. You know, we need to more and more, especially with the younger generation, Gen Z, you know, they just don't want to hear management has said that this is it going forward. They would love to be part of how management arrived at what they said. Hopefully, maybe if they have access to the same quality of data, maybe they too will have arrived at that same decision as management. But they want to be carried along. They want to be involved. So look for ways to seek input and feedback on matters that affect them, which demonstrate that their voices are being heard and valued. Now, when you hear them out, when you show that you value them, even if the ultimate decision is not what they will have wanted, you will get their buy-in better than you not carrying them along at all and you just sending a memo. Say the MD has said, management has said. Another pointer to employee engagement driver will be what? Well-defined roles. You know, we are still talking about the same thing, internal communication. Many documents in the organization are communication tools. For example, a job description is a communication tool. Sometimes, some of these job descriptions is the same JD you've been using for 5 years, 3 years. Even if only, let's say the JD has 10 tasks, even if only 2 has changed and you update it with those 2, maybe 1 or 2 are redundant and you take them out, 1 or 2 have been added, and then you run it through the employee. Well-defined roles. Ensure that employees have a clear understanding of their roles, their responsibilities, and performance expectations. Regularly review goals and progress. Just before I joined this call, I was on a chat with another HR colleague who had done 6 months in our organization, and the company chairman reached out to her because she's HR and told her to go and do a letter for him to sign on extending her probation. And there was no clear-cut reason. There was no mention of performance gap or communication, trying to reference that maybe this was the target and this was what you achieved, which is subpar, or these were some of the tasks you are supposed to have achieved in 6 months. These are the ones that you have not achieved while you are going to get an extension to your probation. So you see this form of easiness, lack of clarity, and sometimes it comes through communication. And when I say communication, I've had it a lot of times, and I'm sure many people on this call can allude to this. You will have a session with an employee, a verbal conversation, and you will have some understanding. Then there's no follow-up, maybe email to say, "Dear Oluyemi, this is a summary of our conversation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you do that, if, for example, there's a miscommunication or misconception, if the other party is misconstruing one or two factors, they can respond back and say, "Oh, this is not my understanding," or "I learn and concur with this." Guess what happens 6 months, 1 year down the line? On the day of reckoning, the employee will be speaking authoritatively that this is what you told me. The HR will be speaking authoritatively that this is what we told you. And then there will be a breach of trust. Who is lying now? Is HR versus the employee or management versus the employee? Meanwhile, if we had closed the communication channel and formalized it via an email or a letter or something, our agreement will have been in black and white. And if the employee is misunderstanding something and you are showing him or her a document she signed, once people see that they signed something, they have this spiritual reset. They realign quickly. And of course, if you are the one making a mistake, then you restrain your what steps. Another key parameter that drives employee engagement is recognition and rewards. We people, we are peculiar in the sense that we get paid for our services, but we want to be thanked. We get rewarded financially, but we want to hear something like, "Thank you." Doesn't it amaze or amuse you why even business leaders, some of them will pay, for example, newspaper or media houses money so that there'll be Banker of the Year award, something of the year award? Isn't the profit they are making sufficient? But we want to see that plaque. We want to see those newspaper congratulations in it. So in compensation and benefits, in rewards, we have intrinsic and extrinsic. Extrinsic is external, things like cash. Intrinsic is internal, and things like thank you, awards, recognition speak to this. Sometimes, if we could all get our line managers, our head of departments, to say thank you once a week to all their subordinates, all their associates, you wouldn't believe how it will significantly impact on employee engagement and also productivity. Try it. Maybe you softly have it as a code with your line managers that every week, before the end of every week, for people who don't have an excessively large team, ensure that you look for one output of your employee that you send in 2 or 3 paragraph appreciation to. "Dear Felix, this is to commend you on how you closed out the sales deal with XYZ company. Not only did you close it out timely, you also got good rates for the organization. Please keep this up." On the average, if you have sent like 6 thank you or commendation emails, and then you send one query, the query won't feel bad after all. For most employees, the first 3 correspondence they get from their line manager is a query. Ask everybody you know that has received a query from their line manager before. Have you gotten a commendation? We assume that the commendation is implied. Internal communication. We must, even as HR, commend teams, commend departments more often. And that culture of commendation, of appreciation, and I'm not talking about flattery. People on this call, some of us can testify how maybe when your colleague comes in the morning and say, wow, I love your suit. Or maybe a colleague, does their hair during the weekend and you say, wow, you must have taken time to make this hair. You are looking sharp. Can I take a picture of you? You don't know how such compliments can make a man or a lady even super productive. And how sometimes you spend 6 hours at the salon, nobody says anything about the hair on Monday, and you can almost enter into depression. Recognition and rewards, we must be intentional. I've spoken to feedback loops. Okay, communication is key. As we reach out with information to employees, they must also be able to respond to us, give us feedback, give us suggestion. Again, when we talk about surveys, many of us typically maybe once in a year or twice in a year will do a survey. So my concern is not doing the survey. My concern is the action we take when we get the feedback. For example, do we do like a summary of the survey and communicate to our staff that, oh, we did a survey in November. This one pager is a summary of the key feedback. One, let the employees know that their survey counts. Show them, it can be like an infographics. Oh, so percentage of the workforce says we should increase or reduce our hybrid work pattern. So percentage of the workforce agree that we are doing well in this. So percentage of the workforce say we can do better in this. Let people even get a feedback. Because we just do the survey, sometimes in HR, share with management, get some approvals from management, some we don't get approval, and then we try to implement, and that's all. Let us first of all provide what? A holistic, summarized feedback to staff. You've spoken, and this is summary of your voice. 2, some of the suggestions, we are going to act on it. So maybe we want to show them a roadmap that, okay, maybe there are 20 points, 10 of them we are acting on it. This is how we will act on them. 5, they are short-term things. 3, they are medium-term things. 2 are long-term things. These other 9 or 10, we are not going to act on it. These are the reasons. Maybe some budget constraint, some maybe value alignment, some regulatory constraint. You can see internal communication. Not that you just do a survey and then 1 year later, we just get another email, come and complete another survey. All the surveys we've been doing, what has happened to them? Work-life balance, promoting work-life balance, encouraging employees to take breaks, use their vacation time, provide resources for managing stress and mental health. If you have not done it already in HR, this is a great time to ask employees to plan their leave for 2024. Let me say this based on my limited experience. One of the reasons many employees don't utilize fully their leave is because they didn't plan their leave. Some people leave their leave open-ended. I will go on leave once or twice next year. If you run leave like that, you will hardly completely utilize it. What will happen is, for example, your employees that are parents, a lot of them will probably want to go on leave in August. Why? Almost all of them, all their children are at home at that time. But if you have planned that leave, say November, December this year, and that's part of communication, the request to plan leave is internal communication from HR. By the time maybe in a department, during the planning process, some of the parents see overlaps, maybe the men or the mothers, they can now adjust and say, okay, you go first week in August, you go second week in August, you go, and they plan it instead of a zero-sum game. you can get some win-win. Or some say, okay, I'll go in the summer break, then the other break you will go. And there can be some consensus. Again, if you want to improve employee engagement in your organization, you need to invest more in your leadership training and development. I was telling a colleague, some few weeks back, said one of the things you can do is send your MD and your management team for an executive program like Rome Business School. When they get access to cutting-edge information, by the time they come back, they will have assimilated some of the quality tips based on global practices and based on case studies. Guess what will happen? Some of the things they've been saying no to you before, they will become more open and more amenable. And then they'll be able to provide more support for their employees and subordinates so that they can motivate their teams. Communication is key. Team building and social activities, very, very, very important. Diversity and inclusion, trying to balance, and it's not just about gender, diversity of thoughts, okay? Create an inclusive environment. There are some things we do today that we do it because we've been doing it, don't think about it. So opening prayer, closing prayer. Do you really need to pray at the workplace? Some people say, oh, just use the second stanza of the national anthem. Because when you pray, because you have a multicultural, multi-religious, what of if you don't pray at all? Or would that still offend some people? So think around these things so that you're not just doing things because you've been doing them. They might have been harming or not being helpful to the organization as a whole. Prioritizing an employee well-being. Okay, so I don't know how much time I have left so that I can still cover one or two things. But when we talk about driving employee engagement, you need to look at the leader engagement. Are the leadership even engaged themselves? You also need to look at it from the quality of the job, the enrichment of the job. Some people's job have become a chore, monotonous. Sometimes, so when things like job rotation, job enlargement, job enrichment, these are some of the reasons why we do it intentionally. Because when people find their job challenging, it drives up their engagement, the team engagement. That's why we try to do maybe quarterly team bonding sessions. And it does not always have to cost a lot of money. And then even the organizational engagement. So let's just, as I wrap up this conversation and throw it open to maybe questions, comments, and also check the chat in case some people have dropped some questions for me already so that I can respond to it. So I'm using companies that are global and have public information. I know quite a number of companies in Nigeria to do this. Thank God it's Friday. Okay, so this particular company you can see on the screen, they typically do it every Friday. During these meetings, leaders and employees come together to discuss company updates, share achievements, and ask questions. Okay, this open communication forum fosters a sense of transparency and community, keeping employees well informed and engaged in the company's direction. So I give another example along this line. If, for example, in your organization, you have space and you have like a canteen or cafeteria, and you encourage people to maybe between 1 and 3 to come and eat lunch. Coming to eat that lunch, you will see how to build a sense of friendship and camaraderie within the team. And people will be able to do what? They will be able to add value. People can talk freely, they can engage freely. Yeah. Then another company here, okay, when they do what they call, they allow employee decision making. This approach to change management encourage open communication, allow employees to provide input and feedback. Okay, so they allow what we call, positive engagement, positive interaction, and the engagement process is the decision-making process is transparent. they involve their employees in decision making. So they don't just throw or shut down instructions or decisions. Like almost like a town hall meeting. This is what we want to change. This is why we want to change it. How do we arrive at the change? And through a collaborative process, people get into the outcomes. And it's because it becomes our decision. Nobody says, so the management or the MD, it's we. Then another organization here, they use their what? Internal social media collaboration platform. It's called Chatter, to chatter, okay, to facilitate communication and engagement among employees. This platform enables employees to share information, collaborate on projects, and recognize their peer achievements. It has become a valuable tool for internal communication, fostering a strong sense of what? Communication within the organization and driving employee engagement up. This is another organization. Okay, they do what we call employee appreciation events. They regularly host employee appreciation events and activities to recognize and reward their staff. These events, combined with open and transparent internal communication, leads to what? High employee engagement and low turnover rate. I know that during this December period, a lot of organizations are having, end of the year parties, which is good, but we should do some of these things more frequently, maybe quarterly. Yeah, the scale and magnitude may not necessarily be the same every window, but don't let the sense of these team building events be lost on us. And they are part of our what? Internal communication process. Where I work currently, just 5 weeks ago, we had a games evening. We brought in snooker, table tennis, all the board games you can imagine. Then I saw my head of internal audit, who is a senior manager, playing Ludo with an officer. And they were having fun. Guess what? By the next week, we noticed visibly improved collaboration. Someone you will have maybe previously been a little hesitant to approach to get a clarification. Because of what that games evening did, people were more open, more bold, and forthright with each other. Okay, so this organization also does a 1-week hackathon, which is sometimes something very mental. You know what an hackathon is? Employees from various departments come together to collaborate on innovative projects. So you can get them to set up the teams. You can even incentivize it and say the winning team wins 1 million naira, 5 million naira, 50,000 naira, or vacation or something, or you support a CSR initiative they are interested in. Okay, it demonstrates the company's commitment to employee creativity and development. So we have looked at some of these things today about internal communication. And I said clearly from the onset of this conversation that whether you are talking or you are not talking, you are communicating. Whether you are writing or you are not writing, you are communicating. Whether you are doing newsletter or you are not doing newsletter, you are communicating. The intentional thing is, are you being intentional about your communication? Are you saying what you want the employees to be aware of? And are you also saying it the right way? Because when you don't say nothing, employees will gist, they will conjecture thoughts and information. They will make up their own minds about what they see. And God help you if they are coming up with the right things. That's why you cannot afford to take communication for granted. And one of the critical value chains in HR is internal communications. So don't just leave it. I know some of us are in organizations where we have like a communications department, a communications team. That's okay. You can work with them and collaborate. Okay. Let the organization, the employees know upfront, like what's the plan for HR and from HR for next year. When you communicate that upfront, nothing you do will shock them or surprise them. they won't say HR has come again. Treat all of them like your stakeholder, communicate that this is our plan. We'll do, what do we call this thing now? KPI setting, so period to so period. We'll do our annual inter-house sport so period to so period. We'll do media appraisal so period to so period. And we'll do our first major recruitment drive so period to so period. If you want people who want to come and do internship in our organization, they should apply so period to so period. Let them have like a map of what January to December looks like. What are the major days you will be celebrating? International Women's Day, International Men's Day, you know, or maybe cancer, something awareness. What are these? You may want to pick one key day a month, and that will help you come up with a calendar so that you can strategize. So I'm checking. I would like to invite our moderator to please come back and join me so that we want to take maybe questions, comments, contributions. While I wait for her, I see one or two comments here. I'll read them out. Someone here says, this is true. For a colleague who used to be non-committal about his finance colleague, went for a week finance retreat. Now he works very effectively with his colleagues. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, I'm still going through. Yeah, thank you so much, Femi Solomon. Says communication is what we do every day, also putting it into practice. Thank you. Then I have a question here. Excuse me. From, if I see this clearly, Pastor Lade Williams, how can you relate to transparency in the case of someone who was sacked in his organization seeking for employment in another organization? So I'll just speak to that in 1 minute. Sometimes termination is inevitable. Sometimes just the way employees resign and go to another organization, maybe due to greener pastures or brighter prospects, organizations too may need to lay off employees. And we should not always think that because an employee is sacked, that means that person is bad. Except, of course, where the reason for the sack or termination is maybe integrity issues like theft, okay, which there needs to be appropriate evidences. Okay, but if it is sometimes due to performance issues, you know, but what I tell employees, potential employees, candidates is, please be upfront about why you left the organization. Don't conceal information and then hope that the organization will not find out later. Some organizations today, they know people across different, even within competition, and they talk to each other back end. I've lost count the number of times someone will call me and say, hello, Yemi, there's so from where you work now, where you used to work. What do you know about this person informally? We'll check whatever you say in confidence. But if you have told the truth that, oh, I had so issue and I left, you know, just be plain. The people who value you will value you, but please don't try and hide or conceal information, because when it comes out, you'll come across as dishonest, you'll come across as not having integrity. Effiong is asking if the materials will be shared. What I can say is that I will share it with my colleagues in Rome Business School. I give them permission to share with participants if that is in line with their practice. Okay. I'm also trying to see, okay, yeah, Yetunde Olariwaju here says, does the two-way communication include opening channels of feedback? Absolutely. So something as simple as information@yourorganization.com, that may be for external inquiries, but you can also say, so for example, HCM, Human Capital Management @ blah, blah, blah. So you should have an email that is not maybe somebody's personal name. So not only Adeosun @ you know, it can be HR @ and from time to time, let employees know that they can send information there. If you are even thinking about whistleblowing, you can even have emails that is tied to maybe a third-party vendor in that kind of, if people want to whistleblow or escalate certain confidential and private messages. Let me see. I'll come to the people with their hands raised. I'm just trying to quickly scan through the chat to make sure I don't omit anything. Okay, all right. So Akunlaya says it's necessary due to the fact that you need to know the current status of every employee. Secondly, it should lead to employer engagement depending on the kind of organizational strategy. I'm sure you must have been responding to something someone else said or something I said. Okay. All right. I can see some comments and thoughts chat box with respect to the case studies. Thank you so much for your contributions and comments. They are all impactful. So I apologize. I may not know the order in which the hands were raised, so I'll just call it randomly.
I think Mr. Emmanuel raises hand first, so we'll probably start with Mr. Emmanuel.
Thank you so much. So Mr. Emmanuel, please go ahead with your contributions, please, or your questions.
Good afternoon, sir. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, because before I was making contributions, but you couldn't hear me. My name is Emmanuel. I'm actually listening in from Kenya, Nairobi. Of course, I'm Nigerian, but I did my first degree in Monash, Australia, and then went on to Accra Business School in Ghana. I didn't even know that there's a school like Rome Business School until I saw it on Facebook, and I really think the school needs to what's the word now? Increase their publicity, because if I didn't look at it, I wouldn't have known that right there in Nigeria, where I'm from, there's a school like Rome Business School. But anyways, thank you so much for this presentation. Very thorough. I've attended several. My first degree was in media communication and then, business as well. But this is very, very in-depth and very clear and easy to understand, very practical. And it really now inspires me because I'm planning now to come to Rome Business School in April. But I just wanted to ask this like a question. Every journal, every material, every textbook that you read or probably research on, everybody keeps talking about the fact that management needs to learn how to look after the employees, say thank you to the employees, commend the employees, when they do well. And absolutely, management is supposed to do that. I own a school in Nigeria, and I'm now talking based on having, led an organization. Management is supposed to do that. But you struggle to find materials or documents that also suggest that employees and staff members also need to have the culture of saying thank you to their first line managers or saying thank you to management as well. So I'm trying to say everybody is saying management needs to appreciate. Sometimes there are people you appreciate from now till tomorrow and it still doesn't do anything. Even though I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but I'm saying I think there has to be some sort of reciprocal attitude where we also need to encourage employees to also know how to come together and also say thank you to management. Well, this is just my contribution, and I hope it just adds to what you've been saying, which I think are very, very important. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. Let me just respond in 30 seconds. Your contributions very valid, very, very meaningful. I can speak on behalf of the people who don't say that followers or members of the employees should appreciate their line managers or management, and I'll tell you the reason why. It doesn't matter who initiates the lead. If you check it, most of the time, the moment you begin to thank your friend for something, guess what will most likely happen? That friend will almost immediately also want to be thanking you for the many things you are doing for them. And because we are speaking to leaders here could be HR, leaders here could be management members. Once it becomes your own culture to always appreciate your team members, give or take, you will realize that your team members will be appreciating each other more, and in turn, they will come back to appreciate you. But please, let us appreciate our line managers. Let's appreciate our leaders, okay?
Of course, thank you. So we'll be taking like 3 more questions. We have Abigail. I don't know if you can unmute yourself to also ask a question. Please, you have just less than 1 minute for your questions because our time is fast spent.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. In fact, this was an explosive session. I'm really excited. Coincidentally, I see that Mr. Enyekan has also asked the same question. So it's concerning the HR, the connection between HR and the communications department. My knowledge before now is for comms, the comms department handles internal communications. From your lecture, I see it's very important. Yes, the HR should have a comms strategy. I mean, an internal strategy, communication strategy, to be able to put and create a cohesive environment and make sure that everyone is fine and ensuring that we meet organizational goals. So, like Eneka was asking, whose job is it? Because sometimes you see comms has sent out a communication out there and HR hasn't given the go ahead. In my opinion, from your lecture, it's as if they are at the hierarchy. It's supposed to be HR because they're handling that's human resources, and then gives the instruction or gives instruction to comms so that there is the communication going out, whether internally or externally, is uniform. There's nothing, HR has gone ahead to say there's this happening, and then comms are saying, no, that wasn't what MD or the executive director instructed. So how can we, like Enekan said, should there be a shared responsibility between both departments, or should HR be the main, well, we take instruction from HR and then we release information, or it's like kind of a shared equal responsibility so that we can avoid confusion, because sometimes it can really cause problems, stories that talk, basically, at the end of the day. Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, madam, and to the person who dropped that question on the chat box. I will say here that I'm not going to attempt to say it should be this or that. It's going to work differently in different organizations. Okay, but what I can say here, at the minimum, which is safe, is that collaboration matters a lot. Now, all the departments in the organization will have one thing or the other to disseminate to the employees. Now, where you have a centralized department, internal comms, the beauty of this is that they are able to pace the release of the information. So that, for example, maybe 7 emails don't go out by 8 a.m. on Monday to our staff. So if you find yourself working in an organization with internal comms, what happens is, first and foremost, by now, have a meeting with internal comms for next year. Have a meeting and say, look, these are the things I want to communicate next year up front, so that internal comms will schedule you into the master comms. It helps. And let them know that we'll communicate this kind of thing, Depending on, so I worked in a place where you will provide the content for internal comms, but they will do the design and the graphics. So just focus on the accuracy of the content, the meaningfulness of the content, leave the aesthetics to internal comms. They may reach out to you for suggestions. They will even show you a sample or a draft. So they will just release it to the entire employees without first running it back through you or the corresponding department who is the initiator of the material. But let's leave who should send it or not send it. But please, let's collaborate. Let's reach out. Again, avoid last minute, because internal comms people generally dislike you send something to them now and you want them to publish it now, except it's an emergency, maybe like an health and safety release or an hazard in town that they are fighting in Koroduro. If it's not an emergency like that, they prefer planned communication. So I have a session with them to say, this is the overview of what we plan to communicate next year. Share like your communication calendar with them upfront and provide them with input, maybe like 4 weeks ahead, because they may also have a lot of creatives and designs to work with, if that is what works. But if your organization don't really have an internal comms department, then HR is responsible to communicating to the employees on various issues in a timely manner. So one of your team members may need to develop their competence for example, using things like Canva, all those kind of tools, or even PowerPoint at a master level, that you can come up with meaningful animations, creatives, and use it. All right. I'm sorry, I'm not able to resolve the issue of who should do what, but let's do it better together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last question will be Daniel.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Thank you so much for this beautiful presentation. It was insightful, like everyone agrees with. So my question is a little bit, it's deviating a little bit from internal communication. It has to do with a little like external in a way. There's this culture that I think it's not really right. Say a company wants to hire, is hiring, let's say for a role. Is it right for the organization, to reach out to the successful candidates and not to the rest? Because it's actually impacting in the whole anxiety of the whole application process. So that's what I'm asking. Do you think it's the right culture for an organization not to communicate, oh, you're successful, and oh, you're sorry, you're not successful? That's my question.
And I would want to say that your question is actually relevant to the topic. We are talking about internal communications and employee engagement. The engagement or disengagement starts from when the person is a candidate. You understand? And even if that person doesn't end up being your employee, they are still like a stakeholder. So the topic will have been internal communications and stakeholder engagement. So it's very much in alignment. What I will say without any fear is that we must close out communication. What do you mean by close out? You did an advert and invited candidates to apply. And then you could have said, if you don't get back to you, it means your application was not successful. So you may not respond to all the applicants who sent in their CV, but you now maybe screen to like 10 or 20 or 5, and you take the pain to schedule maybe 1 hour interviews with those 5. Please, let's get back to them. Now, let me quickly say this. Some people don't get back not because they plan not to get back, but they don't get back on time, and several other interviews have happened and they move on due to the volume of work. So sometimes some people will, immediately after candidates do interview, they will send like a generic mail saying something like, thank you for interviewing with us for the role XYZ. If in 2 weeks you don't hear from us, take it as. That way, even if they forget to get back to you, they've closed it. But sometimes too, you may think candidate A is the person you are taking. 1 month later, candidate A on the day of resumption doesn't show up. And then you want to fall back to candidates B or C. But I would say generally, if you meet 10 people, maybe 5, 7 of them, you already know, no way, we are not moving ahead. Thank them politely, ask for their permission to retain their CV in your database for any future opening that may align with their career interest, and move on. And then get back. Or have like a, what do you call it now? Like an automatic responder that will do it for you. So one of the things I've done where I work now, I just say, okay, what are the people who've interviewed in the last 1 month? Our front desk, she just sends the regrets mail. We even keep her engaged with those kind of pedestrian tasks. Okay, you don't want people's mind to be open to your organization when you have closed your mind to them. Please. Just like if you ask a lady out and she wants to say no, you want her to say the no, not that you are thinking there's prospect. Same thing for candidates. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oluyemi. Our time is fast spent. So what about a word of encouragement for us?
Okay. I'd like to thank again Room Business School for their consistency in doing this, what I would call a social responsibility in terms of knowledge dissemination. I also like to thank all the alumni of Rome Business School and the current students. Please, the beauty of knowledge is in application. The knowledge, you need to turn it to action, and so that we can advance our job, advance our role in our current organization. Please don't forget all our stakeholders, okay? Employees, management, the different category and cadre of staff. Let's treat them as internal customers so that we not only render quality service to them, we not only render professional service to them, we also give them humane treatment. Don't forget that people will not remember what you did for them, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Thank you so much for this program, this intervention. Permit me to say Merry Christmas in advance. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. So the presentation today has been very insightful, and I'm sure every one of us has learned one or two things. So I'll be handing over to Mr. Idowu Adeleke to tell us more about the business school and the program. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Our sincere appreciation goes to Mr. Oluyemi Adeosun. It was a very wonderful one. And then the moderator, Ms. Bukola Olori. Thank you for moderating the section today. And to our audience, you must have agreed with me that this is a very insightful section that we've had today. I usually tell my prospects that this is one thing that makes Rome Business School unique, and the wealth of knowledge and in the delivery here at Rome Business School. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. When you come fully on board, this is to the prospects now that you'd be overwhelmed by what you'll be getting in the course of your master's program. So this is a quick reminder that we're still recruiting for the March-April 2024 intake. We're talking about Rome Business School, an international business school with global recognitions and standards, having 14 master's programs for our executives, that's the experienced professionals, and then having 4 international master's programs for the younger professionals. Those are fresh graduates, those that have a 0 to 2 years work experience. At this time, the school is also able to support you financially, giving you some form of an early bird scholarship of up to 30%. So this is dependent on when your document was applied for the scholarship application for you to be considered. So this is one of the webinar series that we have for the Business Leadership Development Program. So these are a series of webinars that you need to be part of. So from time to time, we would be having these sections and then you'll be getting the invites. So it's been a wonderful time. Sincere appreciations to everyone that's participated. And a very big thank you to Mr. Oluyemi Adeosun for the wonderful presentation. I particularly like the path whereby you engaged the audience, having to hear from them what they feel about the case study. Thank you so much, and do have a wonderful evening.